I'm going to do something slightly different. It seems like everybody, and I've had some fun listening to people, has been showing whizzy things. I'm going to show you some not so whizzy things. In fact, the pictures I'm going to show you are 12 years old. The first international collaboration my school did was in 1997. We hooked up with a school in Hong Kong, and we hooked up with a school in Latvia. And we shared weather data. Now my kids are not very good with numbers. Most of them barely manage 10, and that's just counting. I'm from a special school where we teach children with very severe learning difficulties. We hooked up with these two schools. We shared weather data. That means taking a photograph of what the weather's like outside the window and sharing that with our colleagues, with the other schools. We talked about our lives and where we were and all the wonderful things. So I need to flip something here, just give me a sec. And all of that, and we did it with videotapes. Are we good? Oh, you're there? All right, sorry. We did that with videotapes and pictures that we took with real cameras and took them to Boots and paddy bags. And we had one of the first ever international collaborations, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Think how easy that is to do now. Schools just do that all the time now, don't they? It's like, don't even think about it. My school did our first, I guess, web project in 1997 too. We published some information long before blogs were ever invented about circuses and should we have animals in circuses. It attracted, just hold on to your seat, this is a special school website, 8,000 comments. 8,000 comments from around the world. Amazing, from people from America, from Australia, from New Zealand, everywhere. And these kids did that. It's interesting we talk about games now. Minecraft's the big thing, right? My grandson come home and said, I'm doing a Mott and Bailey castle in Minecraft. And I'm like, somebody in your school knows what they're doing. Brilliant. We used to use games. I got into trouble. I got a disciplinary for networking our ICT suite so we could play Doom in 1997 to teach my kids about mapping and about coordinates. My boss kicked my backside from one end of the school to the other for doing that. She didn't know what it was. She didn't understand any of it. But over the years, she did. These are 4 of my students. I'm just going to share really quickly with you. Some of the things that we do with technology and some of the things that you do that can make things easier for people who have difficulties like this. This is Harry. Harry has a camera. I was once asked by Bector, remember Ben? They were great, weren't they, eh? Asked by Bector to give a presentation on the most innovative technology to come into special schools in my time as a teacher. And I said, the camera. And they were a bit disappointed. They wanted something a bit whizzier, but it wasn't. It was that digital camera. You see that one? Called a Sony Mavica. It was this big. You needed to put it round your neck because it was too heavy to hold, certainly for most of our kids. And it used floppy disks. Remember those? They look like the save icon, somebody told me the other day. It's just like the save icon, isn't it, though? And our kids use those to take pictures. Why? Because despite the fact that the whole world now is using more written languages, my kids struggle, and that for them is their most significant barrier, what they have to write down. And I wanted a different strategy for our kids, different ways of doing things. These 2 students are in the same class. This is Stephen. Stephen has a very profound learning difficulty. He's learning to understand that he can extend control over his world around him by pressing a big red button and making an elephant walk. Sounds great, right? If you Google me, somewhere along the line, you'll find a singing hippopotamus. I made that in 1997. That's 18 years ago. 18 years ago, I made a singing hippopotamus, and I made it for the little boy there. Because he had cerebral palsy, because everything he did in his whole world was really difficult for him. So he didn't bother. He was one of those kids that learned to be helpless, that didn't want to do stuff because people did it for him. I made a singing hippopotamus to engage this young man by pressing his switch and making hippopotami sing. And he loved it. And he would do that for 45 minutes if I let him. And never once would he look at the screen. He would just look at people in my classroom dancing like a hippopotamus and slapping their backsides and learning that this technology is a tool for communication. I press this, people do daft stuff. It was wonderful. He now uses a very sophisticated communication system. Fantastic. Remember these Alpha Smarts? Anybody old enough to remember those? They were what we had before we could afford laptops. They had a screen this big that had one line of text. And for that young man there, that was the best technology ever. Somebody asked me the other day, what would Chris do if he had an iPad now? Because just imagine what he would do. And I said, you know what he would do? He'd play games with him. You'd never get any work out of him. You'd never get any work out of him. This is Peter. Peter was run over by an articulated lorry on a dual carriageway and ended up with a very, very severe learning difficulty. Non-vocal, no paraplegic, quadriplegic, and very little in the way of cognition. He was functioning at less than 3 months, his brain. And yet there he is, using his head to click things on the mouse, on the computer. Fantastic what technology can do. The reason why I bang on about writing, it's like the most important thing in schools. And for my kids, it's the thing that they struggle with the most. I give kids cameras. These are some of John's pictures. John took some pictures, along with the rest of his class, of their HE lesson. Why an HE lesson and why cameras? Because one of my colleagues, you know, there's all these different types of teachers, right? In my school, we have the I'm never using technology in my class teacher, who every July, before we broke up, I took the fuse out of his computer, the plug, and then I'd wait and see how long it was before somebody came to me and said, the computer's not working now, Romy. And it was October. And every Friday before we went home, since we got back to school in September, I said to him, Mick, how's the computer working? And he'd go, fine. And he lied to me every week, every single week. He never got computers at all until I showed him this. I went to his classroom where they made fish cakes, and I gave the kids 2 cameras, they took pictures, and they took these pictures. These are kids who can count to 5, who can't write maybe a word. And these are their pictures. We used instant mashed potato, a tin of tuna. Look at that tin. I look at that now and I think, did we do that? We sprinkled on some parsley because every classroom has parsley in their cupboard. And I took these pictures and went back, put the discs in, looked at them on the interactive whiteboard. Some of the children were able to sequence them. We printed them out, stuck them in a book. My classroom assistant wrote some sentences, and it was brilliant. And he just didn't get it. He just didn't get it at all until I went back the next day with pens and paper and said, I'm going to write about what we did yesterday because that's important, right? Writing stuff down. And yeah. So we wrote about it. I sat down with the kids, and this is the best that there were kids in that class could write down. That's it. And I don't think I've seen anything more powerful than that, because that encapsulates everything that's wrong about what we do with complex kids and why technology is so important. That's what the best kid in that class could write down. This is what they could do. They could take those pictures. All right, so they took 50 instead of 5. 45 of them had no heads or no legs. Doesn't matter. There's an opportunity there for talking about, does my picture communicate information? We went through, they ordered the pictures in the sequence of what happened. What did we use? What did we do? What did we do first? And they were able to do that. They were able to put this whole thing together. Not only that, they put this into PowerPoint and made a talking book. Jesus. Serious stuff. And yet the very best that those kids could do when it came to writing anything down was that. And for me, this is the story of my career, trying to give kids other ways to do stuff that doesn't involve having to write it down. Because for most of the kids I work with, that will always be their barrier. Always be their barrier. Thankfully, technology can help, right? This is the kind of stuff most people have in their classrooms. Whiteboards, don't we love those? We love them in special schools. Half our children in wheelchairs, and the whiteboard 8 foot up the wall. Those children that could, leapt. It was like a joint maths stroke physio lesson. How far can we reach? I see loads of work from people all the time where they're working on the bottom foot of the interactive whiteboard. Look, Johnny's drawn a picture. It's a long one because he can't reach any further. And the best picture I ever saw of interactive whiteboards was a young girl, 5, with Down syndrome. Lovely girl, beautiful new boots. I always make boots lovely these days. Stood on a gym bench. They call it their learning platform. Seriously. Stood on a gym bench with her hands on the, I can't get close enough, with her hands on the interactive whiteboard like this. And the caption underneath said, "Here's Jenny using our new interactive whiteboard." And I'm thinking, no, she's not. Here's Jenny hanging onto the bloody board for love nor money in case she falls off. What's she doing on it? Not very much, because she can't see very much of it, can she, if she's this close? She daren't step back, because she'll fall off the bloody gym bench, won't she? Not only that, I suspect she was a vampire. She cast no shadow. Photoshop. We've got interactive whiteboards. They're brilliant. They really are. They bridge abstract things that we do with mice and keyboards and all of that with concrete things that we do with our hands. And being able to do that for some of our students engages all the bits of their brain. It makes a maths lesson or whatever activity you're doing more multi-sensory in a way. Touchscreens and tablets everywhere I go now. There isn't another school I go to that don't go, iPads, iPads, iPads. And I love them, don't get me wrong. But if I see another child locked up with cerebral palsy like this, their head here, their leg doing this because they're going to extension whenever they try and move their head, with somebody holding an iPad here and going, let me just bang that with your hand and we'll call that learning. I'll scream. Absolutely scream. Keyboards and things, roller bars, joysticks, pointing devices. I get a question every single time I speak. Somebody says to me, should we even bother teaching people to use a mouse now? Because you guys know the days of the mouse are long gone, aren't they? We're finished with that kind of technology. It's gone. A lot of my students work with switches. They press a button and they're able to write their name, write books, my kids never write books. They use communication devices. There's one in my bag. You press it, it says, good morning. Not very much, is it? But for a child that can't speak, being able to have access to that immediately, really powerful. Symbols everywhere I go. We used Orasma in a school that I'm working with to make some understanding from symbols. They point their iPads at a symbol on the wall, and it brings it to life. It links it to a video that means something to students, plus all sorts of other clever stuff. I'm just going to chuck through some of these because I know I want to get us back onto schedule for lunch properly. So touch technology, the most interesting thing with touch technology is everybody can do it. And that's the reason why some schools are resistant to it. I actually had this conversation with a lady who said to me, not having a touch screen in my class, too easy. Too easy. It's like technology supposed to be difficult. What do you want them to do? Stand on one leg while they click them? What? It isn't about how hard it is, it's about what the child can do with it. It doesn't matter. Touch technology is the best technology for many of our students because it happens directly under your finger. It's immediate. They can do stuff with it without having to do everything else. Keyboards are a big problem for our kids. This is my keyboard at home. 115 keys on there. How many letters in the alphabet? That was a question. How many letters in the alphabet? Jesus. How many letters in the alphabet? 26. Thank you. How many numbers? 0 to 9. Now you're thinking, aren't you? There's 10, isn't there? That's 36, right? Let's be generous and add a 14 for punctuation and return and all of that stuff. That's still only 50. What do the other 65 do? Well, in my school, you press any one of those extra buttons, brings the teacher to you. It's like having your own little special bring the teacher to me button. Keyboards are a real problem because they were designed back in 1867 so that typewriters didn't jam. We make them beige with darker beige letters on them so that it makes it really difficult for children to see them. We make them have a million keys at this size. There are all sorts of different keyboards. We can change all of that. We can use uppercase, lowercase, ABC layout, high contrast. If If I had £1 for every time a school, my answer to an email to a school has been, turn off the auto-repeat on the keyboard and the problem will go away, I'd be rich. So many schools I visit, children struggle to use the keyboard because of auto-repeat. They type in Jenny, j, 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 and then somebody goes, oh, hang on, there you go. And they go, because your keyboard just auto-repeats. Turn it off. You guys hold the keys to that, don't you? Because the thing they come back to me and they say is, we're not allowed to do that. Sometimes you have to make those things available to people. Slowing the mouse pointer down, making it a bit bigger, turning off the keyboard auto-repeat. All of that are important little accommodations that we can make to help include students with difficulties. The mouse, same problem. I mean, the mouse is designed for big hands. I have huge hands, my wife tells me. But we can get a mouse now that's tiny. You get them, they look like little bees. My best moment ever was when I was in Bradford, early years centre, doing some work with their teachers there. And the teacher there was talking about their computer, and she held up a little mouse, and it looked just like a frog. It had one eye closed, the right one, so you knew it was the right mouse button. And she said, children, this is a mouse. And they looked at her as if she was stupid. Yeah. It's a frog, you dozy woman. What's the matter with you? I work with lots of children on the autistic spectrum. Can you imagine me giving a child something that looks like a bee and telling them it's a mouse, when their whole life they've run away from bees? Nonsense. Mouse, rollerballs, joysticks, all of this, make it as easy as possible. Don't buy these stupid things. Biggest thing right now is this eye gaze system. Anybody used eye gaze? Anybody ever tried it? One in my bag. You can control a computer now without even moving, just looking at stuff. You look at an icon, if you look at it for half a second, it will click it. We've got children and young people who have very little movement at all in their body, who are able to do exactly the same things that you do with a computer. This man here has motor neurone disease. You've got 4 windows open there. You can SMS message, he can do anything on his computer that you can do. And so can kids. This child came in off the street at an exhibition I was at, and we sat her in front of this. She has cerebral palsy, and she was using that as a communication system within 2 minutes. No training, no anything, just sitting in front of it and her being able to do it. Fantastic technology, but it's just a pointing device. These are the kind of things that we see. This is a heat map generated by eye gaze. It's typical of what we see when a human being looks at a baby. Red means I looked a lot, green means I looked a little bit. Obvious, isn't it? Not quite what you see when we do that with some of our students on the spectrum. They don't look at people's faces. It opens up whole interesting ideas about how we can use technology with some students. Even reading. There's a study going on now with eye gaze for reading. We present children with a piece of text and we look at how long and how often and the way that they read and go through the text and look at the words on the screen. Fantastic. This scares the life out of me. That's a boy, he's 1. He's being eye gazed. He's not using eye gaze, he's being eye gazed. His head is being held still because he insists in moving it. And eye gaze is not good if you move your head. He grabs the wires so that somewhere along the line they'll probably tape his arms up. It's kind of the exact opposite of what we should be doing. Technology is about how does it meet the needs of the student? How does it meet the needs of what I want to teach? Not, I've got a new shiny, what can I do to kids with it? I work with children with lots of technology like switches. Child can learn to use a switch, they press a switch, they make a hippopotamus sing, and that's nice, but they learn that it's powerful. And then they learn that pressing a switch can choose things. And we start off by choosing a drink or a biscuit, or a chocolate biscuit or a digestive biscuit. And then we move on to things like choosing letters from the alphabet, and then choosing words from word prediction systems. And people are able to use a single switch to write in the same way that students who have real difficulty with that sort of stuff. My watch isn't working, so I have to look at the time. Cool. iPads. I say that like over and over again because that's all I ever hear. over and over and over again. I don't know what it is about special schools and iPads. I do know what it is about special schools and iPads. But people have gone a bit nuts. I could bring you an email every single day from a school somewhere in the UK, actually not just the UK, a school somewhere who'll send me an email saying, we've just bought iPads, come and tell us what to do with them. And that for me scares the hell out of me because it's the exact opposite of what I understand. And certainly it's the exact opposite of what I know about technology in schools. Schools used to buy technology based on what they were doing, what they needed, what their students needed. They don't now. They buy shiny things sometimes. And then they think, well, what could we do with it? Interesting. The interesting thing for me is they're everywhere. Apple sold something like 13 million iPads in education last year. And I think most of the special schools I visit bought them. And they're not all like your school. I mean, some of the things that I was sat there, I'm thinking, Telegami, we use that. And it's like all of those things you use are fantastic, you know? But they're not all like that. A lot of schools I work with, iPads are what you get when you behave yourself. You know, get that done, you can have a play with your iPad. And that's quite worrying for me because I think it's a really creative bit of kit. Why are they everywhere? Why has everybody got one? Why does everybody want this technology? Why have we got babies still damp from the birth canal on the internet reading the newspapers and things? Why? Why have we got these group of people? I was in Sydney and somebody said, coffin dodgers. They're not, there's what we call them, silver surfers these days. My bank has a silver surfer group every Saturday morning to teach them how to use internet banking so they can close the branch. I'm just kidding. Why then, these two people, they're operating at opposite ends of the spectrum, aren't they? We've got people who are resistant to technology and people who shouldn't be using technology. Why? What is it about this technology that's different? Back in 1997, I was part of the first Microsoft trial for Microsoft Tablet. It was like an iPad, a bit fatter, but did the same thing. Why not then and why now? Why is this? These are real questions. I'm not trying to be rhetorical. Why, Lord? Why? What is it about iPads that have done this? I can tell you, and I'm going to tell you because I haven't got much time. Because for people like me, I used to spend most of my time in special schools teaching people how to use technology. Yeah? I was sat there watching the things your kids did. And I'm thinking, how much of that could they do? And I don't know your school very well. How much of that could they do if they had to learn how to use a mouse and a keyboard and get over all of that? Most of my kids can't write. Most of my kids wouldn't have the fine motor skills to be able to use a mouse with any way efficiently at all. I spend my whole life teaching people how to do this, instead of using the technology to teach, which is what you're doing. And that's fantastic, because that's always been the goal. Everybody told me for our whole career how wonderful technology was and how it's going to transform teaching and learning. But the kids have to be able to use it first. And we spend our whole life doing that. I still go into schools and children will have a target which says, can click 5 things with a mouse. What? People say to me, what are the learning objectives for iPads? It's like saying, I don't know, what are the learning objectives for breathing? Pointless. It's a nothing. Learning technology this has been what I've done forever. Teaching children how to do it. The iPad takes all of that away. Absolutely all of that away. And that for me is fantastic. This is a little video, just see if this will play. Neat, eh? I'll stop it. That's an app called VidRhythm, and it's a stupid app just made for people, I don't know, hipsters, people with beards and ponytails to, take pictures of their cup of coffee in bloody Starbucks and make a video out of it. But it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant for speaking and listening. And certainly for those children for whom speaking is making a noise. because they're all non-vocal kids and they're all on a spectrum. And all of their targets was vocalise, make noises. And being able to do that was wonderful. We've got kids using it for spelling, all sorts of stuff. There's some fantastic apps out there. Symbols are another thing that I get a bit mixed with. They're another piece of technology that seems to have kind of lost its way a bit. You guys know about symbols, no? Certainly if you're in a special school, you will. They stick them on everything, including themselves. Teachers have tabards with pictures on. And when children want to do something, they come and they'll rip the picture from your tabard and go, look, I want to go to the toilet. That doesn't quite work like that. There's this assumption that because you put a picture over the top of a word that children who have difficulties can understand it. This is actually, we did a workshop looking at symbols. And this is a symbol that somebody drawn. I want you to try and guess what the word was that the person was trying to communicate with this symbol. Have a quick, anybody want to hazard a guess? No, I can see. I'll help you. It's a subject we teach in school. No, but I can see where your thinking's going. Yeah, tree, natural processes. History. Yeah, well done. I've on a clap. History, yeah. And that's as good as the one symbols we use for history, really. Because it's just a picture and it means nothing until children understand what that does. How's my time going? I'm going to have to stop.
Ian, I'm following you and I won't leave 15 minutes. You're much more entertaining than me.
All right, okay. This is interesting. This is a new bit of technology that's kind of finding its way into schools now. There was a big thing about the Wii, wasn't there? Everybody was going to have a Wii in school and we're all going to be throwing numbers and joining them together, and it never kind of happened really. What we had is a load of rewards. For my students though, understanding that they can have influence and control over their world around them, that's quite exciting. A lot of schools are using this Xbox 3C, you know, just to connect. You plug it in your PC and all the software's homebrew. And it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. We're working with a number of schools around the country who are doing some stuff. I'll just show you this little video, just some of the things that they've been doing with this. And this is all free. Xbox Connect, plug it in, job done. You guys ever see Reacticles? An app called Reacticles? You used to be able to do all of this in that app, and it was free. You download it, point it at the child moves their body, and it adds sparkles to their movement. Fantastic for kids that I work with, for whom we want to get them moving, to get them moving around. They broke it in iOS 8, and Reacticles will never get fixed because the money came from academia, and that money's no longer there now. It's a bit of a worry for me sometimes, that sort of stuff, because schools build what they do around apps that are free. And there's no guarantee those apps are actually going to be there anymore after 3 weeks, after the next iOS update. And stuff like that kind of worries me, especially when schools can't building their curriculum around stuff that somebody built in their bedroom. Not arguing its efficacy, because some of the best apps and teaching apps I've come across are probably built by somebody in their bedroom. I've never seen a better app for speaking and listening than things like Talking Ben. I sat with a child, 4-year-old child coming into school, 4-year-old child with Down syndrome, severe learning difficulty, with Talking Ben, doing what kids with 4-year-old do with Talking Ben. They shout at it and he shouts back. And then they make funny noises, and the noise does that. And then they experiment with sound of it, and all that. And then he started speaking Spanish. Hola! And Ben's hola! And I'm thinking, where did he learn Spanish? Dora the Explorer's where he learned Spanish. The interesting thing is his mum's going, he's talking, because he doesn't talk. We did some lovely stuff with photo speak. You guys seen photo speak? A bit like Chatter Kids, all of that. Take a photograph, make it talk. Some wonderful stuff with that. Photo speaks brilliant. You take a photograph and you record into it and it comes to life. We were working with 16 to 19-year-old students with severe learning difficulties who have really poor speaking voices. And we wanted to improve the output, the volume, the quality. And I put a picture. I sat with a young girl. She was 17. Who should we put in this? She said, Harry Styles. So I put a picture of Harry Styles in. And I said, Elizabeth, that's not her name, Elizabeth, what would Harry Styles say if he could speak to you? And she said, I love you, Elizabeth. And she went back and recorded that 5 times until she was happy. 5 times. I've never seen that a child do anything 5 times until they're happy. Amazing, absolutely amazing. Little things like that don't actually, they were never designed for that. You know, because teachers in special schools like me and others, you know, look for what we can do with the kind of things. There's a lovely app called Mad Lips. It puts lips on stuff. That's all it does. Except it can put a lip on anything, like an apple. Eat me, I'm packed with vitamins. You could do a whole little book with animated videos all about healthy eating. There's another one called Chatter Kids. You just draw a line and it puts a mouth there. I had a student the other week who bangs the photocopier. And that's all he wants to do, bang the photocopier. So I took a photograph of the photocopier. I drew a line across the photocopier and recorded the words, Carl Foster, stop pushing my buttons. And I gave him the video and it was wonderful. He looked at it, he went, and then he went back to banging the buttons again. But it was a load of fun. We've got people using things like PhotoSpeak with putting in famous people. Captain Cook, I'm from Middlesbrough. If you could talk to Captain Cook, what would you ask him? I'll tell you what our kids asked him. Which football team do you support? Because you have to get that out of the way, don't you? 1999, I was at a conference and they showed video editing, video conferencing. And they linked up a school in the UK and a school in Denmark. And these kids were talking to each other. But they might as well have been shouting at the wall for how much of it they understood. That we were invited to ask questions. I asked the children in the UK school, what was Denmark? And they didn't know. So it's kind of like you think, what was that about? You know, technology can help with that. We use FaceTime just to talk to the class next door. Because then you understand that this is like a communication device. And the stuff I'm getting might be coming from somewhere else. And we do podcasting. You guys do podcasting? We do podcasting not for podcasting's sake. We do podcasting because it's a good way to do speaking and listening. We get a group of students, they go away, they pick a news story. That news story might be something in school or something from the local paper, and they make a podcast about it. And it's not about the news story, it's about them being able to speak. And people understand what they're saying. It's just a different way of delivering what we do already. You guys were talking about blogging. I'm a big fan of blogging. The only issue with blogging is often, unlike, I get your school's different, but most schools, their audience are largely a couple of their teachers and maybe a few kids' parents. And it's not really an audience, and you don't really get comments, good comments, and you don't really get comments that you can be sure of. One of the things that we've been involved in is quad blogging. You can go, have you guys done this? Go to quadblogging.net. You can sign your school up onto quad blogging and create your blog, and they will partner you up with 3 other schools, at least one of which will be somewhere else around the world. And what happens is the focus shifts every week. So your first week is your week. You do your blog. The other 3 schools look at your blog, and the people there comment. The kids there comment. The teachers there comment, and then the focus shifts to the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one, and it just goes round and round. And then they release you out into the wild with all the other schools that are quad blogging. And you actually get a huge audience for your blog, but they're safe audience. They're not, scroats who are going to write nonsense on it. I'm a really big fan of blogging because I think, if a kid's going to do some work to go on the blog, they want it to be good. If they're doing some work just for you, they want it to be good enough, don't they? If there's things that they're going to share, they want great stuff. They want it to be brilliant. Quad blogging can do that. I'll skip that. I'm going to show you this one. I'm very big on student voice, as you can imagine from some of the things I've spoken about. Student voice for me is absolutely incredible, and technology can facilitate the capture of that and give kids other ways to express themselves. This is a piece of video to put the context in place. This is a group of kids from one of the schools I work with, and what this child's done is take part in a boating trip up the northeast coast, up by Northumberland. And it's a group of students, all with severe learning difficulties and autism. We gave him a flip camera, just a flip camera. Didn't even tell him how to use it, just give him it. To make a vlog, they call them now, don't vlogs. And this is his vlog of that trip. You might need some help with
Okay, well, what to say about the trip? Well, a couple were puked up, but not me. Health strong. Mind you, the trip was to a place I've been a lot of times with my granda and my dad. And it would have been a 10-minute trip in a car. Took several hours. But the trip was uncomfortable for some people, but not me. I was one of those that soldiered on.
I can hear his voice in my head all the time.
Well, today's been great. Probably going to light a fire or something like that later on. I don't know. That sounds a bit weird to me. But anyway, well...
It would to normal people, wouldn't it, lighting fires?
Like I said, beach I've been to, Blenheim Bride Beach or something.
I'll pause it because it lasts about 4.5 minutes and it finishes with the classic line, how do I turn this effing thing off? And he didn't get into trouble for it. And the reason he didn't get into trouble for it was because he did that he just sat with his camera and did it and kept a record of all of the things that happened over that weekend when they were on that boat. And this is a kid that wouldn't write a sentence. And it doesn't matter how you dress that up, he wouldn't. Because he can't. Writing for him is the most incredibly difficult thing ever. Giving him that gave him a tool to be able to express himself. Oh, Jesus, did we create a monster? Here's the same student now. This is what he does now. He has his own YouTube channel.
And now it's time for my top 10 worst video game endings, part 2. Now I don't have the game
reviews
with me,
video
but
games.
Twilight Princess, one of my favorite games. The ending, it just sucked. But everything towards that was epic. You had a possession fight, that was epic. You kicked Ganon's ass with Midna, that was epic. Midna died against Satan, Ganon form, that was epic. And then
I'm going to stop it there because pretty much everything's epic. You get the point though. Here's a child that if we relied on what that child could write down, if what that young person, how much we value that young person is based on what they can put on a piece of paper, we'd write him off. And yet that kid can do so much stuff. We just look for different strategies for that. I'm not saying we chuck the pencils away, right? We still need those. But it's nice to have an alternative strategy for people to be able to do that sort of stuff. I'm really going to finish now because I'm eating into your dinner time. But, you know, you were saying earlier that all of this doesn't really matter. This technology isn't magic. It's because its teachers are magic, right? And the people who use the technology is magic. They was first said that in 1993. Now, probably when most people, certainly some of the people in this, were still at school. This was a study which looked at the impact of ICT in education and whether it actually had any impact. And this was the headline statement. Nothing miraculous happens automatically when you put a child and a computer in the same room. I'll put a star by the word computer because you could change that for any bit of technology. Nothing magical happens because you've got an iPad or an interactive whiteboard or a Android tablet or eye gaze or any of that. What this goes on to say is that where technology is most effective are where the people who use it have an understanding of what it is they want to use it for, who they want to use it with, and they know how to use it. And I guess what they're saying there is understanding who it is that you're teaching, understanding what it is that you want to teach, and knowing how to use it. That involves quite a few little steps along the way. I'll finish with this and I'm done. I showed this picture earlier on when we first started. This is a young man, he was run over by an articulated lorry. He in any other time, he would probably have died. He survived. He came to our school with a PMLD label. That means he's functioning at less than 3 months. No communication, no no movement or anything. I found out just by happenstance that he could actually move his knee. And it was because I'm moving in his chair and he trapped my fingers and I told him off, he did it again. It tells you stuff about kids. So I put a switch on there and I put some music on there. I thought if he can bang that with his knee, he could put some music on, right? That'd be great. So I put some pop music on. He wouldn't do it. So I thought, wonder what will motivate him. What would he like? So I spoke to his mum. His mum said he likes Dolly Parton. Right, bear in mind he's 9 at the time. He likes Dolly Parton. He's 9 and he likes Dolly Parton. How does he like Dolly Parton? Because his mum likes Dolly Parton. His mum and dad, every Friday, go to the club dressed as cowboys with guns. She's telling me, we have guns here, and when we go, we can shoot it. We have drawers. And there people dress up as Indian, Native Americans. And I'm thinking, don't I just stop there? So I put Dolly Parton on there, and he pressed that switch with his knee, and he was aware with it. And I thought, I wonder if he could do that in response to something. So I kind of, in PowerPoint, made something pop up on the screen, Dolly Parton. I could see people getting excited, and it wasn't anywhere, it was just a picture, right? No bounce, anything. So Dolly Parton pops on the screen. When he sees it, keep with me, he pressed the switch. Brilliant, I thought. I wonder if he could choose. If I pop up Dolly Parton or pop up somebody else, who might he not like? Pavarotti. Far apart, right? So it popped up on the screen, Dolly Parton, and he would press the switch. It popped on the screen, Luciano Pavarotti. He pressed it once. Just have a listen. Didn't like it. Never pressed it again. So I had in 3. Luciano Pavarotti. Willie Nelson just died. and Dolly Parton. And he can choose from those. And it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And then somebody invented a program called Clicker 3. You guys know about Clicker? Primary schools use it. They're on Clicker 6 now. In those days, it worked with a switch. And it had an on-screen keyboard. And a little red box went over all the letters. And if you pressed the switch when it was on that letter, it chose that letter. And I showed him it. I said, look, Pete, what do you think of this? And he looked at me. I looked at him. I said, what are you going to do with it, Pete? And he wrote type. T-I-P-E. And I thought I could tell him off for a spelling mistake, but no. What are you going to type, Pete? He wrote letter, L-E-T-E-R. And I thought, ooh, who are you going to write a letter to, Pete? He wrote ma'am. And in those 3 words managed to communicate to me that the same kid who was knocked over by a lorry that night was somewhere inside that body with no mechanism to get it out. We worked on that switch, and then somebody invented this. It's called a head mouse. It was £1,000. This is my second disciplinary for spending the school ICT budget on that. I've been this close to getting a sack my whole life. I blew the whole budget on that, and I got into trouble. But he stuck a little dot on his head, moved his head, the mouse pointer followed it. He could put the pointer onto a letter, and it would click it automatically for him. Didn't need all the switches and all the complication. Within a year, he was writing and at the same standard as he would have been if he'd stayed in his primary school and hadn't been run over. He left our school, went next door to the secondary school. He left there with 5 GCSEs. He went from there to college, got 3 A levels, went from there to university and got a degree in tourism. And he's still in a wheelchair, and he still has a communication aid, and he still operates it with his head, and he still can't speak, and he still can't move. And technology made that happen. And that's why I bang on about alternative strategies and looking at what technology can do. I'm done. Thanks very much.